Alright guys, so here's part 2 of the video, continuing from where we left off on the 2 crankbait rods. I also have a third crankbait rod over here, and I'll show you the action here in a little bit. I'll put the other rod, or the other reel on it. But this is a 755 CB glass composite. It's 7'5" medium heavy. And this one is pretty much a technique specific rod for me for using like the big Norman DD22s. I can also throw lipless crankbaits on that rod. It's pretty much, it has pretty much the same backbone as the 705 CB over here. All 3 of my crankbait rods are glass composite rods, so they're all the same. They all have the same style of action. That's one thing that I look for. That's actually the reason why you don't see me using different rods. You don't see me having Duckets and Dobbins and Shimano's and Powell's and stuff like that. When I use rods, I use all the same manufacturer, or I try to. Sometimes I'm not successful in doing that, but by doing that, it allows me, when I jump up 1 power, it's 1 power up from what that manufacturer says, where a 4 power from one manufacturer might be a 5 power in another manufacturer's rating. So that's kind of the reason why I stick with one manufacturer when it's possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but when it's possible, that's what I do. But with the Norman DD22s and stuff like that, because that's pretty much, like I said, a technique specific rod for me for throwing like the bigger, like the 6XDs and the fat-free shads and stuff like that, I can throw them on the 705 easily. It just doesn't have the length for the casting distance that you might be looking for. But if space is at a premium, or you want to bring 3 or 4 other rods with you and that's all you can take, this 705 will throw that all day long for you. So, and also, I forgot to mention, I can also, on the 724, I can throw like the shallow diving, flat-sided crankbaits and stuff like that, like the Spro Little John, not the Fat John, but the Little John that has the smaller hooks on it and stuff like that, or the Jackal Bling, the Lucky Craft Kelly J KJ Flat. You can throw all those little crankbaits, Norman deep little ends and stuff like that. You can throw them on the 724 very, very easily. So moving forward, my one spinning rod that I have, it's a, go ahead and show you, it says it's a 712 medium light extra fast. It's 7 feet 1 inch. It's a medium light extra fast action. This is actually paired up with a Shimano Symmetry 2500 FJ. They don't make this one anymore. They have a new style. I think that these older ones were a little bit nicer. I was actually very pleased to get my hands on this reel when I was able to get my hands on this reel. 2500 size reel is probably the most common for bass fishing. Some people like to go up in size when you get up into like the 4000s, the 3000s, 3500s, whatever else there is. Some people like to get that bigger size to get a bigger spool on there. By doing that, you compromise having a heavier outfit, and when you're into a really light outfit, like a medium light or something like that, sensitivity is essentially the name of the game. And so you take in the good with the bad, or you have to choose what you want. Do you either want to have something that's going to be easier to deal with out on the water by having a bigger reel, but by sacrificing a negligible or possibly a small amount of sensitivity? That's something that you're going to have to figure out for yourself. This is, like I said, it's 7 feet 1 inch, and this is my lightest rod that I have for throwing soft plastics. I can get this thing off of here. This rod I use for, I don't drop shot a lot, but I do split shot, and I do darter heads a lot too. And this rod is perfect for those really light or ultra finesse style techniques. This is a split shot right here. It's got a zoom finesse form on it. This is a really good rod for throwing these techniques that have these really small hooks on them. This is a number 2 size Gamakatsu EWG, and for those little tiny darter heads that have the really small light wire hooks on them, this rod, even though it's got an extra fast tip, it's got a really soft tip. So you'll see that this rod, now I think that this rod has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 9 plus 1. But you see, like, as opposed to the crankbait rods that also have a soft tip, this one bends around the fifth to the sixth guide from the bottom. But it has a really soft tip, so it still allows you to play the fish, but without sacrificing that sensitivity. It's a give and take type of thing, so that's where this rod differs from a crankbait rod, where it's still an extra fast taper, meaning that you can see it's bending down the rod fast. I mean, it's coming to the power section of the rod fast. So, but it's still soft, so you're still able to let, when you do hook the fish with these really small hooks, kind of like a treble hook, you can fight the fish with this rod. So that's something that I look for in these really light ultra finesse. I call them ultra finesse, but it's more just a standard finesse outfit. So also the line on there is 8-pound fluorocarbon. All the fluorocarbon that I use on this spinning rod, and then I use on this one, and this one, as far as the fluorocarbons that I use, and they're all Seaguar abraz-x. That was just something that a friend of mine suggested to me, and I've kind of just stuck with it. I really like it. It's a little expensive, but it seems to be really nice for me. So, and then you jump up to the next rod. Now this is a 2-power, and now I'm going to jump up to a 2-power casting rod. Now some people will tell you that a 2-power casting rod is the same as a 2-power spinning rod. That might be true in some manufacturers. In Powell Endurance, it's not. The 2-power casting rod is not the same as a 2-power spinning rod. This rod here is a 722 CX Fast. This is a 7'2" medium heavy extra fast action. And I don't even think that they make this rod anymore. I really like fishing. This is my shaky head rod, and I really like fishing shaky heads from a casting rod. It's a personal preference of mine, especially when I'm fishing in deep water. I really like to have that extra backbone, and I like the ability of the hook set that you get from this style of rod as opposed to a spinner or a spinning outfit. So it's got an extra fast tip. So you see when I bend it, you'll see it bends around the 5th to the 6th guide up. Now this is a 10+1, so it's got one more guide in there. But you can see that this one doesn't have as soft of a tip. It really wants to spring back to where it's at its normal position. So, so you're going to get more sensitivity by having that, but you're going to lose the ability to play the fish, or play the fish as much. But when you're fishing with shaky heads, depending on the type of hook that you have, normally shaky heads and small Texas rigs, like I use like 1/0 Texas rig, like extra wide gap hooks for Texas rigs on this outfit. That just seems to, you get into more of a gap where it allows you to play the fish a little bit more anyway, so you can actually afford to have some of that sensitivity back in the rod. So, and this is a 7'2", so there's that action again. And this has actually got, let's see, this is 12-pound. Normally I would use 10-pound fluorocarbon, but because most fluorocarbons, mainly namely the Seaguar abraz-x, the 12-pound has the diameter of 10-pound. So if I can get away with it, then I try to use bigger if I can. So this has 12-pound Seaguar abraz-x. This has 8-pound Seaguar abraz-x. This also has the old Gen 2 abraz-x Revo S. And I really like these reels. The Revos, the older ones at least, they just have such a fantastic drag system. They allow you to set the hook well on the fish. They've got a multi-washer, drag washer system in them, and they're fantastic. For the price that you paid for those reels when they were out on the market, when you can still buy them, you just got such a good reel for the price that you were paying. So then we jump up here to our 3-power. This is a 723C medium heavy extra fast. It's 7'2" medium heavy extra fast action. Again, it's got the Abu Garcia Revo S. Now, again, this is a 7'2", so you're getting a little heavier yet. This is more of a utility rod for me. If I'm not sure if I'm going to throw some jigs or Texas rigs or whatever, this is kind of like the tweener. I like to throw, this has got I think it's a 9-inch, what is this, a Zoom Mag 2 worm on it, or just a ribbon tail worm like any power worm that you'd find out there. It's got a 3/0 hook on it. But a lot of the time, this is what I use to throw my spinner baits. I like to throw all of my spinner baits on the worm and jig style rods, because what is a spinner bait essentially? It's a jig. And so I still want to be able to get that hook driven in when the fish comes up and bites it. I've lost way too many fish fishing spinner baits on crankbait rods, and it's just not worth it to me because you're not getting that hook driven in past the barb. So like I said, this is a medium heavy, extra fast. So you're still in that extra fast action. This is a 10+1. You can see how the rod tip, it does not want to come back towards me at all. So, and we're still bending around the 5th or the 6th guide. In stark comparison to the crankbait rods, where that rod tip was almost coming back towards me, the rod tip here, even when I'm pulling on it, still wants to point down and towards the corner over there. And it's still only bending around the 5th or the 6th rod, or the 6th guide up from the bottom. So very, very good utility rod here. You can use it for damn near everything. I wouldn't throw it on the biggest jigs because it still doesn't have enough power in the power section of the rod here to get that really nice hook set. For me, that's when I'm going to actually jump up into the 714. You guys have seen me use this rod a lot. By the way, this has, let's see, this has 15-pound Seaguar abraz-x on it. And so this next one has 17-pound Seaguar abraz-x. We're going up even further. This is a 714C heavy extra fast, 7'1" heavy extra fast action. It's a little bit shorter. I would have liked to see that. I don't know why they did that. I don't know why that they chose to make the one rod in that whole entire series 1 inch shorter than the rest. Because my 5 power is a 7'2", the 3 power is a 7'2", the 2 power is a 7'2", but the 4 power is a 7'1". I don't know why they did that, but they did, and we're going to deal with it. This is my jig rod, you guys. You guys see me use this for jigs all day long. You guys have seen me use this for the last couple of years for jigs. So it's a 7'1", like I said. It's a heavy, where normally in a lot of manufacturers that I found, like the Shimano's and stuff like that, this rod would be like a medium heavy. So some people get scared off by the fact that it says heavy. It's not really a heavy. It actually has a lure weight of a 1/4 ounce to 1 ounce. So that's actually what you're going to find in a lot of medium heavies. So and again with the rod tip, I think this is a 10+1 again. Yeah, it's a 10+1, and it's the same style of action again, you guys, but you just have a much more stiff backbone. In fact, you'll see that this rod is actually, it's bending more towards the 6th and the 7th guide from the bottom now, and that's just because it has more backbone. The more backbone is actually starting to filter up into the tip section of the rod now. You're going to get a better hook set by having a heavier power rod like that. And also it still has that sensitivity there. And when you start moving up into the bigger jigs and stuff, jigs typically, depending on the type of manufacturer or the manufacturer that you buy from and the type of hooks that they use, generally speaking, jigs have pretty thick wire hooks on them. So, and again, it's got that the Revo S on there. So I really like this rod for throwing jigs. I can throw I also like to throw Texas rigs on this rod. I can throw like the big 5/0, like the Wacom Tater Bug, the big 4.5-inch soft plastic bait. I love throwing that thing on a Texas rig on this rod. You can also throw those big Goliath worms, or like the big 11-inch worms from Zoom and stuff like that on this rod here. So very, very good rod for that. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video right there around 14.5 minutes, and we'll continue on in another section. All right, guys? Thanks a lot.